in order to achieve onto the Salesforce platform, we use this particular managed product called as platform cache. Previous caching options. All right. So here it is. Yeah. We have various caching options earlier as well, like custom metadata, custom settings, S objects, but those are very inflexible. If I talk about the custom setting, in custom setting, we can save, means we can create that particular custom metadata, or we can save the, means hard coded data we can save in those custom settings. All right. So in order to fetch those particular data, we use to call the custom setting and get that particular data from that field or whatever object to manage those custom settings we have created. All right. So those particular data can be fetched into the code, into the Apex, but there we have the specific value which we can fetch. All right. We are not querying anything into the database. We are not doing and touching anything into the database while creating or while storing the data in custom setting. All right. So that's why that is very inflexible to get the data, or what I'll say that in order to get the data from database layer. All right. So recent caching option, if you see, we have various caching option like a browser cache. CDN is I'll say the simple form of cache on the browser cache, wherein we can cache the data onto the browser. I'll say the IndexedDB is the simplest form of caching. All right. We had metadata cache and database cache. We know that in Apex, when we used to do the circle and we used to get the data, let's say I have done, means I have query the data and I have to use particular set of that data in multiple times. All right. We used to store it into a list and then um, do the data manipulation. Based on that, we'll show it onto the UI. All right. So might be the case wherein we have to do one query multiple times into the Apex by one click. All right. So in order to do that, we use platform cache. So here comes Salesforce platform cache. If you go into the developer edition, we have 0 MB by default, but you can request the trial capacity, which is 10 MB. And when, as soon as you just have to go to the quick find and do platform cache and you can request the trial capacity, you'll get it 10 MB. In the enterprise edition, we get 10 MB by default. In unlimited and performance, we get 30 MB by default. All right. So I'll say that these particular memories are more than enough in order to perform, or in order to check how performance get increased using platform cache. But let's say if you're using platform cache extensively, you can buy it out, and that particular size can be increased up to 3 GB. All right. So 3 GB is the maximum limit which you can purchase from Salesforce for platform cache, and that's a lot of limit. All right, now I'll talk about why exactly we need to use platform cache in Salesforce. Let's say it's the snippet which I have, means the screenshot I have attached. These are related and these are given into the developer blogs only, which Salesforce created. It says they have queried and they have get these particular data, which says that if we are making a 12 million requests per day, the DB CPU usage was 83 hours, and DB CPU percentage usage was 7 to 8%, and database queries per day goes as 12 million, and average response time is 30 milliseconds. And if we use platform cache, there is a drastic reduction in DB usage and heap as well. All right. I'm not talking about the duration. I'm talking about the heap also, because heap is also a major pain point for developers, wherein they face that heap limit get hit. All right. So using platform cache, if we are making a total request by 11.39 million, that is approximately 12 million. The improvement in DB usage is 7 to 10%. and offer served from cache means the data can be served which can be served from cache is 99%, because there are various scenarios wherein uh, data can get lost from cache based on the time limit, or I'll talk about we can assign the time to live for that particular cache. I'll talk about later or onto that. And if I'll talk about the improvement in response time, that is 60%. All right. So it's really high. So types of Lightning Platform cache. One is session cache, one is org cache. So session cache, what is session cache? It stores the data for an individual user sessions. The maximum time of this particular session to live is 8 hours. Means TTL is the time which says about time to live, which is reached up to 8 hours, and after that it will get expired automatically. Whichever time comes up means if you have assigned some time into your code for that particular cache, or 8 hours, whatever comes first, it gets expired. And there are two classes which talks about session partition. One is cache.session partition and cache.session. These are the two classes which is being used to get and put the data. If you are managing cache values in one partition, let's say means I have cache partition, I have made 10 cache partitions because I want to use one partition for one particular scenario and another other partition for another scenario. Then I'll be using cache.session partition, not cache.session. Let's say if I have created one particular partition, the minimum limit of creating a partition is 1 MB, and maximum you can go up to, means there is no limit for that. If you have purchased to 3 GB, you can go up to 3 GB, means you can create one partition up to 3 GB as well. But in order to use session partition or different partition in different scenarios, it's better to create a partition and use cache.session partition, not cache.session. All right, so org cache. I'll talk about org cache now, which says that means it stores data for any user in your org, and they can reuse this particular cache data. So session partition, it's for specific individual users. And if you, means there is one particular question come into your mind that if we are using session partition or session cache for a particular user, individual user, how can we handle that, like to get the session ID for that particular user and use that particular data for that individual user only? The good thing about cache.session partition, session cache, it itself check for that particular user. We need not to find or need not to catch the session ID of that user and mention that. This is being inbuilt by session cache by Salesforce, so no need to worry about that. In org cache, what is the means the specified time to live for that particular session data is 48 hours. And here we have two classes, cache.org and cache.org partition, means to get and put the data. So again, for the same thing, if you are using multiple means if you are using platform cache in multiple scenarios, I'll suggest to use org partitions, create multiple partition and use it for multiple scenarios. If you talk about here, if you see this particular code snippet which says that cache.org partition, I have just instantiate that particular org partition and get my partition here cache.org. Let me get a pointer if I can. Yeah, there it is. So if you see this particular local partition, the partition is my partition name and local is my namespace. So cache.org.get partition picks up into the string. We get local is the namespace and the partition name which I have created. And I'll check if org partition, means this particular instance which I have created dot contains key, I have to create this particular key, and I'm putting the value into that key, and then I'm putting the value into my cache partition as trailblazer. All right. So now we'll come to the demo. What I'll do is, in this particular demo, I'll perform and I'll leverage platform cache using Lightning Web Component to fetch the object names. First, I'll tell you very small scenario, and this is the GitHub repo which I've saved, and you can get this particular code in order to test it out in your developer org. All right, let's go to VS Code here now. All right. All right, I'll tell you. Okay, yeah, keep it this. So, um, yeah. So, in this particular scenario, what I'm doing is I'm creating map of string as object type global describe. I'm making a global describe call in order to get the objects, and I'll do the system.debug and check how much time it will take. All right. And I'm writing it into my scripts in VS Code so I can run it directly here. Execute anonymous. Okay, let's do it. Okay, I have to mark it up. Yeah, yeah. Execute anonymous. Let's see what's the output here. Yeah. Successfully runs. Let me check it one more time. I think it'll come into the debug console. All right, let's do one thing. We'll go to my, any which ways we have to go to the org so that we can test it out. All right, logged in. Yeah. Parth, can you check who is this Netflix user? He's again and again raising his hand. I don't know.
Just a second.
All right, so here I am. This is the platform cache in my org. Yeah. So if I go about, this is my trial capacity which I'm using, and this is the namespace which I was talking about, local, and this is the name which I have given to my cache partition, and I have assigned 1 MB for my trial capacity in my org cache. I'll be using org cache instead of session cache because this is the use case which I'm performing. So we'll talk about that. And let's go to developer console because there are a few things which we can do in developer console only. Okay. Let's go. All right. Here it is. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing one particular global describe call and saving it in the map and just doing the debug. Let's execute. All right, so this is the debug log, and if I see global result has been there, and if I check the performance of this, all right, here it is. If you see the duration, it talks about 115 milliseconds, and the heap is 4169. And if I check the performance here, let me see one thing. Execution stack, yeah, here it is. So in execution stack, if you see the global describe call, which I made, it took around 113.92 milliseconds. just the global describe and 2 milliseconds to show it onto the debug while executing on anonymous. All right, let's do one thing. I'll go to my anonymous, and here what I'll do is I'll remove this debug, and yeah, in this cache.org partition, here's the org partition which I have created. I'm not using my namespace because I haven't defined this local namespace because I am running into a org, because namespace is being required by ISV partners. Like if I have created, means if you have created one particular package and part of that particular package you have created a component as a platform cache partition, in that particular scenario, in order to run or in order to save the data which you are going to fetch into that particular partition, which is a part of a package for ISV partners, then they use the namespace which they can create, and the ISV partners get 300 MBs as default into their org so that they can run it and save it into their cache platform cache partition or whatever they want to create, and they can add it as a component part of a package and then install uh, into the customer org. All right, so they can use that as well. So namespace is for that. And if you see this particular code, I'm just getting the instantiation of my particular object data which I have created as org partition, and I'm putting the data here as global result, and 300 talks about the time to live seconds. So time to live seconds here is 300 seconds, which means about 5 minutes. And global result, this is the key, and this is the unique key, and it is case sensitive. So this is the key which I have created, which I'm going to use later on to fetch the data from my platform cache. All right, before that, I'll show you. Yeah, if I calculate, the partition has zero used capacity right now. Once I put the data into my cache partition, it will be changed. I'll show it to you. Let's say I execute this. All right, and this is the first time when I'm putting the data. So let's go to the performance, and if I check and execution log. All right. So while using a map and just doing a system debug, it took around 115 milliseconds. And here it took 195 milliseconds. The heap is larger than that. All right. Because on the first time I'm putting the data here. All right. So let's keep it here itself. And let's go to partition cache here and recalculate it. Here it is. So the partition, it used 100%, and it talks about org cache usage, it's 0.8%. All right, so here in this case, let's do one thing. I'll go to my anonymous window. What I'll do is, I'm not using map here now. I'll comment this one out, and this is the thing. What I'm doing is I am just instantiating my partition or partition and just getting the data. All right, you can get the data and store it in any primitive data types, because the return type of this particular object, or I'll say for partition, is an object, so you can store it anywhere. Let's execute this now. If I debug, I see the data is there. All right, it's stored into the cache. And when I go into my stack, yeah, here it is. I'll execute and check the execution stack as well. You see the drastic change here. When I did the query like schema.get describe call, and I got the duration as 115 millisecond, and on the first time I'm putting the data as 195 millisecond, it took more than that. But after that, when I use second time, means it has been stored into the cache, so I'm getting the data directly from the cache. I'm not doing the describe call. I'm just getting the data from here, like, and the duration of that is 64 millisecond, and the heap is reduced drastically. If I talk about it, reduced around 4 times, right? So it is 1182, and the duration is 64 milliseconds. From this, it's that approximately doubles. And if I run it again, let's see if reduced more or not. Mm, Data is there. Okay. Again, it goes around 59. So roundabout, we can talk about it 60 milliseconds, 60 to 61 milliseconds when we are getting the data from platform cache. And when I'm doing the describe call directly, I got, this is the very small example. Now I'll talk about the real example, real scenario which I have created. And we used to use that particular scenario every day-to-day life. All right. So let's close the script. Okay. All right. This. Yeah. Here it is. I have created one particular Lightning Web component here where I'm just using a Lightning card here in order to show the object names. So instead of Lightning card, you can use combo box, or directly you can get it into that, or Lightning data table as well. You can use it. And if you talk about the JS, here is the JS. If you see, I am using wire method through which I'm getting the data based on my methods I have created into my Apex. If you see, I have created 3 imports here. And if you, I'll show it to my controller, wherein I have created 3 different methods. One is object name by socle, object name by cache builder interface, and object name by from cache. First, I'll talk about object name by socle. Let's go and deep dive in for this controller. And here it is, object name by socle method. And I have created and saved my partition name into this final string because I want to keep it static. That's why I'm using that. And if you see this particular socle, I'm just doing a socle on entity definition and get that particular stored in this object names, which is object options. And if you see in object options, what I'm doing is I'm implementing the comparable interface through which also what I'll talk means what I can say through this particular comparable interface also the performance gets increased. All right, so in this particular yeah, here it is. In this particular socle method, I'm just querying the data and showing it through the JS onto my page. Let's go to my page here. All right, let's first we can do is we can clear the cache. All right, because I'm using the same cache into my code. So yeah, here it is 0% now. I'll go to my sales app onto the page. If you see, yeah, on home page itself, I have created the object list. This is the object list. And if I go and close all the logs, and this is the aura log, which I is created, which I just reloaded and it shows my, all the object names here. All right. So, I'll open up this log and check how much time it took while performing the action through Socle. Yeah. So the heap is 6371 and the duration it took around 164 milliseconds. All right. So let's reload it again so that we can see. Yeah. Mm, Again, this is the log. Let's see. It increased. So 164 millisecond and now it took 170 milliseconds. And let's do it one last time so that we can get the average. Yeah, here it is. 158. All right, it got reduced. So what I'll say that it took around 165 milliseconds on and all on the average. All right, and the heap it remains the same because it is caching the data or using the DB usage here and showing into the UI. All right. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my JS and I comment this method and I use cache method. All right, and before I execute this, I'll show you what is written into this method. All right, once it's saved, I'll go to the controller. Okay. All right, saved. So yeah. Yeah. So here it is. This is my object name from cache method. What I'm doing is I'm just instantiating my particular cache partition in our partition, and I'm see foremost thing here using platform cache, we have to handle the cache misses also because we are defining the particular time for that particular cache to live. All right, let's say in a particular scenario I'm not using and I'm not defining that particular time to live, so this particular cache get expired by 48 hours. All right, so if I won't be able, if I'm not handling the cache misses into my code, then we won't be able to retrieve the data after 48 hours. All right, so cache misses is the major thing which we have to handle into our apex. So if you see, I'm checking the partition and then I'm checking if the partition is having some particular value or not. If it is there, then I'm directly assigning into the object names list. Otherwise, I'm querying the data and putting the data into that particular partition. If you talk about the parameters or arguments of put method, I'll go into that as well. Yeah. So we have various partition method, like in get also we have. In put, I'll talk about, we have five. One is put key and the value, key value and visibility, key value TTL, and key value TTL visibility and immutable. All right, so I'll keep the immutable as well so that I can explain all the things. So key is the key or string type, and this is the unique one. It is case sensitive, which we gonna use while getting the data which we have put into the cache. And the value when we have put, like here in this case I'm putting the data as cache object names which I'm getting and putting through query. All right, 300 is my TTL time, which I put here. It is an integer and it is in seconds, so we can keep it as you want. And cache visibility, I have set as cache visibility dot all. This is the enumeration which talks about if you want to showcase or you want to access this particular cache into your customer org when we are keeping means if we are keeping as part of a package through ISV partners. Or immutable, I'll talk about immutable, which says that it means we can access or we can get that particular value, means another namespace we can use here. Let's say if I want to access this particular platform cache partition through another namespace, if I keep it as true, then we can access this particular name, this partition through different namespace. Let's say I have installed one particular app which has been created by ISV vendors, and this particular app has been installed into a customer org, and they want to, their partition cache limit has been hit. and they want to access the partition, cache partition from their subscribers, or let's say the app they have installed. So they want to use that particular cache. If the ISV has marked as true, then they cannot use that particular cache partition through their namespace. If I have marked as false, they can use that particular cache partition through their namespace as well. All right. So this is the thing. So I'm keeping as true. That's it, just for the demo. So I'm putting the data here. Let's go and see how means what exactly is the performance for that. Here it is. So let's keep I'll show the platform cache also. All right, if that has been consumed or not, so that we are confirmed that it has been consumed and data has been stored into that before loading it up, because I have saved the code and loads and yeah. Oh no. Okay, it refreshes and it reloads it, and let's see. Here it is. This is the one wherein it must have installed the data or save the data into the platform cache. Let's see from here, because I reloaded and duplicated. Okay. Okay, they haven't. Okay, let's see again. Mm, I've saved it, right? Yeah. Mm, Project names from cache. All right, let's reload it once again. Let's see how it goes. All right, consume now. Yeah, here it is. For the first time, I'm putting the data, so I think it will take time. The duration, the performance I'll talk about, it is increased. Yeah, here it is. So the data has been put, and the duration it took around 201 millisecond, and we came up to an average for doing through Sockle around 165 milliseconds. All right, let's do one more reload, and let's see. Here it is. Yeah, here it calls about object name from cache only. Let's go the performance. All right. So in Sockle, it took around 165 millisecond. And once we put the data into the cache, on the first time, it took around 201 millisecond. And after that, when I am fetching the data from cache, it took around 18 milliseconds. And the heap, if you see from the earlier one, it took around 6371. And now the heap has been reduced to 1330. So there is very drastic change into that. And if you talk about here, and if you see the performance stack here, yeah, I'll go with the Sockle directly. Here it is. Yeah. So this particular controller, it took around, well, when we are doing the Sockle, and in Sockle it took around 62 millisecond. Oh, means 62 millisecond has been taken by Sockle to run. All right, and if I talk about here in my platform cache, I think Sockle won't come here, right? Because I have queried or got the data from my platform cache. All right, so there's a drastic change here. And if I go or reload it again, let's see one more time how exactly, and is there anything, or it will get reduced more from 18 milliseconds or just the same reloads, right? Yeah. Yeah. 15 milliseconds. So that's huge, right? A basic scenario which I have run wherein I'm just doing one particular call and one particular circle, and that two very basic call wherein I'm limiting to 200. We are not putting the data, or we are not doing the data manipulation, and so it took around, means there is a drastic change here, right? 15 millisecond and 165 milliseconds. So, and the heap is also reduced. That I would talk about the heap only, if you means not the performance, because performance we can get it increased and in various scenarios, but heap we cannot reduce. So heap is the thing which is the main pain point for every developer. When they hit the limit for heap, it's very difficult to reduce it. So platform cache is the one which helps you out with that. Now we'll talk about the cache builder here. Means I have gone to the demo and I'll talk about the cache builder. So cache builders, what I'll talk about. Cache builder here in this particular code, if you see, I'm putting and checking the null checks and doing the null checks and checking the cache misses here. I'm handling the cache misses here and by putting if else statement. Cache Builder is the interface which has been provided by Salesforce, which handles the cache misses automatically. We don't have to handle it through our code or through Apex, all right? We just have to put the data or query the data in do load method. This is one particular simple do load method, and we use the cache builder interface. We just have to query the data. It handles automatically everything for cache misses as well. Now I'll talk about the cache misses. Here it is. First of all, I'll comment this out and I'll go about cache builder interface, and I'll import in my wire method. Just save it. Yeah, there's one particular limitation for cache builder, which says that we cannot specify the TTL time for cache builder interface. When we are using cache builder interface, we cannot specify the TTL time. But in when we are handling through Apex, we can define the TTL time. So what does that mean? If we are not specifying the TTL time, that means that particular cache data will stored in all cache for 48 hours and session cache 8 hours by default. All right. So yeah, yeah, I have saved it, and now I'll go with my cache builder uh, method so that I can make you understand. So here it is. So if you see from cache, I have used and built this much code, and in our cache, I'm just cache builder. I'm just using this. All right, means I have used the different interface. If you see, I'm just instantiating my partition. I'm just checking the if there is any partition is there or not, right? I'm just calling that particular cache builder object cache builder dot class and putting into the data or with this particular key, right? So here is my particular class which I have created. This is a util class which use the cache builder interface. So here it is. So I'm using the do load method and passing the key here, the key which I'm using object list. All right, I don't need the key to pass it here. I'm just keeping it as is so that we can use it. And I'm just querying the data here, and I'm not also putting the if else statement here. I'm just doing the query and putting the data into object names and return it into that particular object. And do load method is an object type because the cache returns the data in object type. So I have just use this cache builder interface and doing the query and putting the data into that. So I don't have to do the if else statement and check the cache misses. It cache builder handles it automatically. And now I'll run it here. Yeah, I'll just reload it. Okay, let's do one thing. I'll clear the cache first because it has been stored again already because it has not been expired. So yeah, now I'll do the reload. Yeah, here's the developer console, and this is my log. For the first time data has been put, it took more time, and then after that, in the second load, yeah, here, again the same thing, 18 seconds, 18 milliseconds, sorry. So, and the heap also reduced. So this is the usage of cache builder interface. It handles the cache misses. So this is the usage of cache builder interface, which is provided by Salesforce. And now I'll talk about the org cache use cases. Means we can use use cases for org cache, like case list for service agents and lead list for sales agents, and we can use it for the report summary data and shared user profile and metadata and org info. And if you talk about the session cache use cases, means if I have the org by default as private, so in order to get the accounts or contacts or user info private to that particular user, and the order history and order item and discount information for that particular user, we use the session cache. Custom data for with calculation in that particular transaction for that user, and financial data. These particular things we can use in session cache, and other things will be used like mentioned for org cache. All right, so these are the things which these are the use cases which we're going to use for org cache and session cache. And key points to consider: you can go to the developer forum for the limits which we have to focus before implementing the platform cache and the best practices. And I'll talk about, and I'll say that not all data can be cached, because data that has been shared among multiple users, that can be and getting constantly updated, that leads to race conditions. Means you cannot fetch the data of the previous, means might be the case you will pick up the data of the previous user and the data which has been stored by that previous user, and you are fetching that data. So I'll say there are specific use cases wherein you can use platform cache, and there itself it need to be used and the performance get increased. All right, so these are the references. You can go to the references. There is one particular trail mix that's really good, for which has been created by ISV product team and developer guide. And thanks to Anil Jacob and Josh Kaplan, which has created the blogs regarding platform cache on developer forums. And the trailhead, you can go to the trailhead module as well. So these are the references you can use to understand more. Or and here comes all the things, and I have explained everything regarding platform cache. And if you go and check out the slides here which I have shared, I have the link on slides here, and I have the GitHub repo which I'll share with Path in order to check it out into your personal dev work. And now I'm open for QA here, and if you have any question post this session, you can uh, Twitter me, and you can email me on Vineet1817, and you can go to the blog and mail me there as well. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone, and thank you Parth and Vipul for giving me this opportunity to give this particular session on platform cache. And I'm open for QA right now.
If anyone has any question, they can unmute themselves and ask Vineet. Also, Vineet, we have I think 2 to 3 questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'll check. Yes, you can get the recording of this session, and we'll, yeah, you answer that part. So, uh, okay, so Govind Raj is asking some questions, right?
Yeah.
So, if any product new object introduced, would that also get displayed here if you're using platform cache? Uh, New object introduced means I'm not able to understand what you're saying. So if you talk about, let's say I have created one particular object, all right, and I'm querying, in this particular example, I'm querying the limit of that particular query is 200, all right. I'm not making the global describe call, because in global describe call I can get the object, all right. So let's say I have created the object, and at that particular time the cache is having the data already, all right. In that particular scenario it will not be picked because we are picking the data from the cache, all right. So once the cache will be expired, and then the query will run for the second time, means, and store the data into the platform cache. At that particular scenario it will be picked. So likewise, I'll say that there are various use cases. Let's say I have one particular call out, I'm making a call out, and I have to, once I get the response, I may not have to change that particular data for one particular day. All right. Means, let's say I have a sales data, and I have to project that particular sales data, and that sales data comes at the end of the week, and I use that particular data at the end of the week. So in that particular scenario, we can use those particular platform cache. And in this particular scenario, which I talk about, the making a call out, I make a call out, I get the data, I've saved it into the platform cache. I may not have to change that for one particular day. So in that particular scenario, I can use this platform cache, and in second day it get refreshed, or the response will be changed. In that particular scenario, I can use. How is it possible to use platform cache in Trigger? In Trigger, in Trigger, uh, platform cache, you have to write it into the apex only. So means this particular question is very vast to talk about. Means in Trigger, let's say if any scenario, any updation is happening, based on that we can call the apex and save that particular, means call that particular sockle and save the data into the platform cache. We can do that. So means, is there any specific scenario wherein you are talking about platform cache in Trigger, so we can address that? Difference between or enabled cacheable equal to true and platform cache. There is no difference, means there are unrelated here. So or enabled cacheable equal to true, I have mentioned into my code. Let's go to the code. Into the code, why I do it, in order to call the apex method into my LWC web component, I have to write or enabled and cacheable equal to true. So I'm using a wire adapter to get those particular data from the particular method of an apex controller. So these particular or enabled and cacheable equal to true is used to get the data into my LWC from apex, right? So platform cache and this is very unrelated.
So Vinith, sorry. So let me reframe that. Say
Yeah.
for example, if you are using Lightning components, right? So at the time
Mhm.
we don't want to use the catchable equal to true. So just or enabled is fine.
Yeah.
So if I use the catchable equal to true, so how that it get different from the platform cache? So just curious to know.
No, cacheable equal to true is related to web components. In Aura component, if you are mentioning the method as at the rate Aura enabled, and then use in Apex, you do means you get the partition, platform cache partition, and save the data into that. There is no means it will not hamper anything. So difference I want to understand, means maybe I'm not understanding correctly, or there is some lag between us. What exactly you are
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
here?
Sorry. So what I'm asking is, so say for example, I'm not using platform cache. Okay, just I
Mhm.
have a lightning component, so that is querying the list of objects and display. So if I put cacheable equal to true, so that is also caching the what to say records from the server and storing. So whenever the lightning components refresh, I'm using the records from the cache, right? So at
Right.
that time, if I use platform cache also, so would that be any relation or both are same? Both are caching that.
So in that particular time frame, if you talk about, let's say that particular cacheable equal to true, that is going, and cacheable equal to true is referencing to your browser crashing, right?
Okay.
And here in platform cache, what you're doing is you're storing that particular data into your Salesforce org itself, right? And
Oh,
getting
okay.
the data from your Salesforce org itself.
Okay. Okay.